Exploring the unknown. From conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I'm your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. Like always, we hope you've been well since the last episode. We've been kicking it in high gear lately, trying to survive everything that gets thrown our way, and as you have too. We kind of got a different episode coming up for you. This is going to be a one-parter of a two-part series. We're going to reconnect for our every year or 2 year so live video series and try to do a live session for you guys. And this is going to be the intro to that live session because Chris and I are going to be together here in about less than 2 weeks. So,
hmm Yeah, and the day we do this is technically not today. Today's recording is on 9/9/24. When we do that, it's technically going to be on the fall equinox, which that's the
mm,
start of the Samhain season, which are Samhain, which is eventually leads up to Halloween and All Saints Day after. That would be November 1st.
might
So,
be a perfect day to do it. Just as
absolutely, it'll be
long,
active.
knowing you're an eye luck, it'll probably be like 6 inches of rain and
Yeah, really.
yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah. So,
wind, rain, sleet, or snow, we never rest. So,
no, we'll be out there through the misery probably, but hopefully it'd be nice. I'm hoping it'd be like 75 and just perfect. Yeah.
Nebraska has a tendency to have erratic weather around this time of year. So, yeah.
And I believe that they'll have a football game that day too, so hopefully that will leave us a little more room down that in that area to do with what we want to
hmm
do when it comes to investigating. But what we're going to do is hopefully we can find it. I have a general idea where it's at. Chris believes he knows where it's at. I know that I know a few people who know where this particular site is. But we're going to be investigating the grave site, hopefully. And today's part one episode will be introducing you to who this person was and to a Nebraska killer named Charlie Starkweather, who ravaged Nebraska with his girlfriend in the 1950s. And he's probably the most well-known Nebraska, I guess, serial killer that you'd say probably that's ever, come from this state.
hmm
And, quite a sick individual, I think he's really sick in the head. He had this persona of fascination, I believe, for Marlon Brando. That's who he wanted to kind of
Emulate. Yeah.
replicate in his life, if I remember correctly. And yeah, we'll just go to show you what like crazy two young crazy people in love can do to a person, and there really is some conspiracy behind and mystery behind this duo killer couple because supposedly the girlfriend claims that she never had anything to do with any of it, but
hmm
yet Charlie here is saying the boyfriend that she's just as guilty as I am,
Yeah,
but
though
he
his
gets the
last words
chair and
before
she
they
gets
gave
to
him the
live.
chair, he said, "This bitch should be sitting on my lap." Yeah.
Yeah, but right there. So,
hmm
that should tell you, is he lying or is he being honest? To me, when it comes from a cold-blooded killer, he's probably being honest.
Narcissists like him will be pretty honest about their intentions of what they're actually going to do. I lived not 6 blocks from where he committed his first murder, which was the Crest Station here's the Belmont area, Hartley Street, where I lived, Ninth and Hartley, essentially, or yeah, here's 11th, 10th, Ninth and Hartley. I was in
It's kind of
between it.
funny you say that because one of my former coworkers that just retired lives at 12th and Hartley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That person's still in the same area, and up if you go up Ninth Street. And we'll show this if we can get over there in the next part.
Yeah.
There's a park over there called Maxie Roper Park. If you go across the cross street on Adams Street there's a park and there's some apartment buildings. That is the site of the Fugate house. That was his girlfriend, was Carol Fugate. So that is exactly the area. My mother encountered him on the other side over here. There was this Save Mart. I don't know. It's called Schmeckles now. I don't know what the store is called now, but
hmm
it was called Save Mart for many years when I grew up in that area. Over here's a
I
place
think
called
it is it the grocery store you're talking about in Belmont?
Yeah, and right across
I
from
think
here,
it was a Schmick's Market whenever you
Schmick's.
left, and then
Yeah,
now
in Schmick's
somebody else
Market.
bought it out and it's something else now. It's like My's Market or something like that now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something like that where you had Runs an Egg Roll King over there,
Yeah.
but and Holiday Inn, and over across the street, across over here on 10th, over there's a liquor store called Amen Liquors. That's what it was called when I left, and it used to be a penny candy store where my mother encountered when she was a little girl. Charles Starkweather, while she came out of that, he pinned her up against a wall there. So it
Hmm.
was first introduction just before, it was literally like a week before he killed the Crest Station operator there.
Hmm.
So, and if you watch the movie Murder in the Heartland, that is 100% accurate to the
Yeah,
Starkweather
it was a
murder.
good movie.
Yeah.
It's one of my
And
favorite Lifetime movies.
yeah, and it was actually very decent. And the reason I also wanted to have this conversation, of course, he went into the countryside, killed a couple of people. His grave is actually
And
next to
out
two
of
of his
state. I
victims.
think he went over into Wyoming.
Yep, yeah, he went into
Killed somebody.
Wyoming, and that's essentially when he went out of state is really when they started really hunting him. But the thing is, though, people have asked me in like my sessions and whatnot, what actually drives somebody like this? What is the main force? Well, obviously, there's evil behind this, but I found out it's more of a lack of. And this concept was brought up on a series called Friday the 13th, the series years ago, when some of these people that collected haunted objects, people can look that series up. Great series for that time frame. Jason was not in it, but they said they encountered Satan in that, and the main character goes, "Oh, this seems be more of like a lack of something versus like more power of like darkness." And this is what the debate Joanna and I've had, where is it lack of light or is it more of shadow, or what is it? What is causing it? What is actually happening, I found out in psychotic people like this, there's two things. One, a soul is actually being covered by possibly a different entity taking possession of. Manson was the same way, I believe, with this. But with Starkweather, all of them, any of the lack of empathy. Sometimes there's something in the brain that's not firing, but at the same time, I found out there's no soul there. Literally a soulless being walking around that literally is psychotic. And I found out some people in MK Ultra programs and stuff like that can be programmed that way, like a Manchurian Candidate. But in Starkweather's case, I believe that there are monsters that conjure up because of the energies of this world. Every now and again, you get just some really horrible monster that pops up. Uh, Hitler was one of them. You have creatures like that wander the earth,
Mm-hmm.
that they're either born without a soul or they have some other backing by there's some monstrous force that's using them as a meat puppet. With Starkweather, I feel
Corporations nowadays.
yeah, exactly, and you have entities that are in a different dimensional state that are controlling people like this, like a meat puppet. And I feel with this, some like he just didn't have a soul essentially, and something knew they could scare the crap out of that neighborhood and out of out of Lincoln that way. With him around, his first murder in the area where grew up from age 11 on was the Belmont area. Like I said, Hartley Street. You've heard many people have heard me talk about Hartley. Then you have well, we can stop by there on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
But the Crest Station was about 6 blocks over and up. It's called a Quick Shop now, or at least when I left it was. And over in that general area, the Quick Shop is sitting on just the Crest Station was about further over on the same site. But after that, after Starkweather, they started rebuilding over there, and it's a Quick Shop, so it's not on the exact geographical position as the Crest Station, but it's in the little area there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't know where that was. It's because they moved it. So they built another building. So but yeah, with Starkweather, yeah, I gotta look at my thing real quick here. It is yeah, he committed. He was only like a teenager. He died. He was born November 24th, 1938, and he died June 25th, 1959, in Lincoln. He died in the electric chair, and it took them a couple whacks to get him too.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a creepy dream about him once.
I think
I'll
they
bring
zapped
up
him
a
4 times.
zapped him 4 times. I had a creepy dream of being in this prison where he died, and them giving him the chair and watching them zap him. But then I overheard people in the background doing psychological experiments on people like him, kind of like a Clockwork Orange type of deal. Now, I can't substantiate that second part, but I don't doubt that that is happening in the background. So that's something I can't prove, but my intuition's telling me that that stuff happens. Like if anybody's seen Clockwork Orange, they wanted to study what made somebody like him tick. They figured they'd run experiments on him, and they end up making him worse. In the end of that movie, one of the creepiest movies of all time, but it's in psychology classes, it's actually required watching if you're going for a
Hmm.
degree in that area. But I feel that they did that with Starkweather. I don't doubt that for a second. Some of these geekoid types would have been salivating to try to figure out what made somebody like him tick. So
Yeah.
I figured it was like Clockwork Orange. That was my dream where I saw the
And
scientists
like
sitting
I
around.
said, he kind of really was in a unique time to be a serial killer because he was kind of after some of the earlier ones and he was kind of before some of the most notable ones,
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of fits
Exactly.
in into a weird time frame to be, raising hell and causing terror.
Manson was up there too. He was one of the unique ones as well, but I feel he fell under the same thing. They poked at him a little bit in TV series, like they showed in a series called Dark Skies. They had Manson be like affected by possessed by aliens. That's what did it eventually to him. And that in the sci-fi realm they did that. But in the series CSI, when
Hmm.
that was on the Las Vegas version. There was a character when Lawrence Fishburne took over for the character of Grissom for a while. Morpheus, if people are unaware, but in the Matrix. But what uh, what happened was there was this character called Haskell. That was my mother's most hated character of all time in the CSI TV series. I found out he was a blending of Charles Starkweather and Charles Manson.
Hmm.
When the writers wanted to create the character, who are the creepiest serial killers of all time, and the ones that actually really enjoyed killing, the Starkweather killed a child by sticking a shotgun
And he
in him.
did it
That's
for
one of the things
fun.
he did. Yeah, he did it for fun. And Haskell, the character of Haskell, they took traits from Charlie Manson doing the ritualistic crap. They took traits from Starkweather doing it for fun, and they created the character of Haskell. And that's why I found out how there was a merging of those two. I
Hmm.
recognized the traits because I recognized the
Hmm.
killer profiles, but yeah, Charlie Starkweather also, I came to find out if people are familiar with the Sheridan Boulevard area of Lincoln, uh, where all the rich people are. Um, I went over there and I did not know anything at the time, I didn't know anything about Starkweather, zero, when I went over there. I found out in that area, him and Carol Fugate robbed a rich couple that were over there, and he killed the maid out in the driveway of this house. When I went over there, I felt some horrible energy over there, and I kept seeing in my head him butchering a maid. I kept
Hmm.
seeing somebody in a maid outfit being stabbed to death, and I found out that was him that did that. I didn't know at the time. I knew nothing about Starkweather, zero. And then I started looking into it more, and my mother told me about it. And said, yeah, she had met him, told us the whole story. But he went out into the country. That's where he killed a little child. That's where he killed this older couple. And it's the older couple. Oh God, I wish I could remember their names. He is. I know, folks, I'm a little thrown off today, but the two that was an elderly couple that he killed.
Yeah.
They actually
Hmm.
buried him next to those two people in in uh,
Really?
in
Are
the
you sure
cemetery.
about that?
Yeah, uh,
We'll have to look
that's
at that.
yeah, I can't completely substantiate because I saw this years ago. I think people bitched enough to where they moved the other two. But the grave, well, actually we're going to be over there when we film the other one, so I can say it's in Wyuka Cemetery. But at least last I saw,
And
this was in
we're
2006.
going to attempt to, if all else fails, I'll try to see if I can't maybe make it over there, and get a good grasp of where it might be, and maybe ask around before you come. But we're going to attempt to find it. Hopefully, it's a
Mhm.
massive cemetery, though. It's a very, very, very
Huge.
big and expansive. We could literally walk around there for a week and probably not see every headstone, so.
It's a massive, massive cemetery right in the middle of,
And
it's close to downtown.
obviously, they
Yeah.
have his exact location private for family only, so you have to find it since he's a notarized,
hmm
notorious
Serial
killer.
killer. They didn't want it vandalized, but when I was there, they could have moved these other two headstones. He was buried next to two of his victims, which we thought was pretty fucked up. So
Oh
I was there
yeah.
with a paranormal team at the time, and yeah, even the people in the paranormal team were complaining about that one. So it was like he has some descendants out now that people have harassed. I discourage anybody from doing that. His descendants have nothing to do with him at all. It's just like Osama bin Laden had a niece that was a musician, but after 9/11 and people harassed her, it made no sense. So this is the same kind of deal,
Well, okay. That same friend of mine I told you that lived over in Hartley,
mhm,
he grew up in Belmont. Well, he was friends with the family of Charles Starkweather,
mhm,
and his friends growing up, they were a younger generation, it would be like Charlie would be like their uncle or maybe father, if you want to think of it that way.
mhm.
And it was Charlie was my friend's uncle, if that makes sense. And he'd be hanging out with his friend, back in the 70s, hanging out. There'd be a random phone call in the afternoon. They should kill this. It's like they killed your uncle.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
got harassed. A friend of mine
And
there
so the
in Lincoln
family
knew
would
this
get
guy too.
harassed based on what, even though they could be good people, not do anything, which I have no doubt the guy, I've never met him, but I know he sounds like a nice guy. He would never do anything like that. And,
Oh yeah,
but he
I've
gets
heard of him
judged
too.
off
Yeah.
of his family's actions.
He inherited the last name, and people said, "Why don't you just change your name?" He goes, "Why should I have to?" It's like,
Yeah.
but yeah. Did you have any links you wanted to share about any
Yeah,
information on
I'll do
Starkweather?
one good overview of the whole story for people
Sure.
that aren't aware. Uh, I'll just go, says host disabled participant screen sharing. I'll just read it. So, I want to give a good overview here of what actually happened. Is screen sharing on?
Let me see if I forgot to turn. Oh, here we go. There we go. Now it's on.
And for people that are interested, there will be a few pictures throughout this. So, hold it up here. You see that, Chris?
Yep, that's it.
So there's the man himself, born to kill. And this is from a website called TroyTaylorBooks.com. And I think I've been on this before. I should look at some of their press. But this is an article from Monday, January 21st, 2013. So on that date of January 21st in 1958, Charles Starkweather, age 19, claimed his first three victims, relatives of his 14-year-old girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate, in her family's home in Lincoln, Nebraska. The slayings started a murderous road trip through the American Badlands of Nebraska and Wyoming that ended up with 7 more people dead. It was an American horror story that ended with an electric chair for Charles Starkweather and with a ruined life for his young girlfriend. And there he is. I forget, was it James Dean or Marlon Brando? I forget which one he wanted a repertoire that he had a fascination with.
I believe he has the hair thing of James Dean going
It
on
was
there. So
Dean then. That's who he
yeah.
was in fascination with and wanted to replicate. Charles Raymond Starkweather was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, the third of 7 people to Guy and Helen Starkweather. They were an ordinary family from a working class background with well behaved children, and nothing to suggest that one of the children would become one of America's most feared murderers. Guy Starkweather was, by all accounts, a mild mannered man. He was a carpenter who was often unemployed due to rheumatoid arthritis in his hands. During Guy's periods of unemployment, Starkweather's mother supplemented the family income by working as a waitress. Charlie attended Saratoga Elementary School, where I worked, Everett Junior High School, and Lincoln High School, in contrast to his family life. Starkweather possessed his kind remembrances of his time of going to school in his early childhood. He was born with genu varum, a mild birth defect that caused his legs to be misshapen. He also suffered from a speech impediment, which led to constant teasing by classmates. He was considered a slow learner and was accused of never applying himself, although in his teens it was discovered that he suffered from severe myopia and had drastically affected his vision for most of his life. The only thing in school that Charlie really excelled in was gym class. It was there that he found a physical outlet for his growing rage against those who bullied him. Starkweather used his newfound physicality to begin bullying those who had once bullied him. That inner rage soon grew to reach anyone that happened to dislike. Charlie went from being considered one of the most well-behaved students in school to one of the most trouble and most feared. A high school friend named Bob Von Bush later recalled, "He could be the kindest person you've ever seen. He'd do anything for you if he liked you. He was a hell of a lot of fun to be around, too. Everything was just one big joke to him. But he had this other side. He could be mean as hell, cruel. If he saw some poor guy in the street who was bigger than he was, better looking, or better dressed, he'd try to take the poor bastard down to his size." After viewing the film Rebel Without a Cause, Charlie developed a James Dean right there, a fixation, and began to groom his hairstyle and dress himself to look like Dean. Starkweather related to Dean's rebellious screen persona, believing that he had found a kindred spirit of sorts, someone who had suffered torment similar to his own, whom he could admire. In 1956, Charlie then met 18, met a 13-year-old girl named Caroline Fugate. He soon developed a fixation on the girl, who returned to the older boy's attentions. In order to be close to Carol, he dropped out of Lincoln High School in his senior year and started working at the Western Union newspaper warehouse. Now, just that right there, if he would have chosen to stay in high school, this might not have ever happened.
Pretty much, yeah.
It was the perfect job for him since it was located near Whittier Junior High, where Carol was a student. Being close by, he was able to visit her every day after school. Starkweather was considered a poor worker, and his employer later recalled that he was terrible at his job, having to be told things 2 or 3 times so that he could get it done right. But it wasn't stupidity that made Charlie bad at his job, it was his obsession with Carol. Charlie taught Carol how to drive, and one day she crashes 49 Ford into another car. Mr. Starkweather paid the damages, since he was the legal owner of the car, but this caused a fight between Charlie and his father, just like the fight between James Dean's movie father and Charles's favorite movie, and he kicked Charlie out of the house. Charlie quit his job at the warehouse and began working as a garbage collector. Unhappy, angry, and belligerent, he used the garbage route to begin plotting bank robberies and finally conceived his own personal philosophy by which he lived the remainder of his life. Dead people are all on the same level. On November 30th of 57, Charlie committed his first murder. He became angry at a local gas station attendant named Robert Colvert for refusing to sell him a stuffed animal on credit. Starkweather returned several times during the night to purchase small items, then finally, brandishing a shotgun, forced Colvert to hand over $100. He forced the man into his car and drove him out to the remote location. When Colvert realized that Charlie planned to kill him, he fought back, but was injured by the younger, stronger man. Starkweather shot him in the head and left him to die in an empty field. He later claimed that by killing Colvert, he believed that he had transcended his former self, reaching a new plane of his existence in which he was above and outside the law. On January 21st, 1958, Charlie went to Carol's home. She wasn't there, but her mother and stepfather, Velda and Marion Bartlett, were. Out of the young girl's earshot, they took the opportunity to Charlie that he needed to stay away from the young girl. Charlie responded by shooting both of them to death. He then killed their 2-year-old daughter, Betty Jean, by strangling and stabbing her. Then, if you're watching on screen, the area behind the Bartlett's home where Charlie and Carol hid the bodies of the family. They must have hid them back in here.
Mm-hmm.
When Carol came home, they hid the bodies behind the house for the next 6 days. They lived there together until shortly before the police arrived on January 27th. They had been alerted by Carol's suspicious grandmother, who had been unable to reach Velda and Marion for days. Charlie and Carol went on the run. They drove first to the Bennett, Nebraska farmhouse of 76-year-old August Meyer, a family friend. Looking for money, food, and a place to hide out, they broke into the house and Charlie killed Meyer with a shotgun blast to the head. After ransacking the house, they ran again. And if you're on the screen, investigators guard and examine the car Charlie was driving on January 27, 58, the day he and Carol killed 3 people and got stuck in the mud near Bennett, Nebraska. Fleeing the area, Starkweather and Fugate drove their car into the mud and abandoned the vehicle. When Robert Jensen and Carol Keene, 2 local teenagers, stopped to give them a ride, Starkweather forced them to drive back to an abandoned storm shelter in Bennett, where he shot Jensen in the back of the head and then attempted to rape King. But not being able to perform, became angry with her, so shot her to death. According to reports, Carol mutilated Carol Keene's genitalia in an apparent jealous rage. Starkweather later admitted shooting Jensen, claiming that Fugate shot Keene. The 2 fled Bennett in Jensen's car, the Ward House in Lincoln. So they come back. Starkweather and Fugate drove to a wealthy section of Lincoln, where they entered the home of industrialist C. Laura Ward and his wife, Clara. Both Clara and maid Lillian Fensel were fatally stabbed, and Starkweather snapped the neck of the family dog. Starkweather later admitted throwing a knife at Clara. However, he accused Carol of inflicting the multiple stab wounds that were found on the body. He also accused Carol of fatally stabbing Fensel, whose body had multiple stab wounds. When Laura Ward returned home that evening, Starkweather shot him. Charlie and Carol filled Ward's black 56 Packard with stolen jewelry from the house and fled Nebraska. It was the murder of the wealthy industrialist that caused an uproar in Lincoln. Every law enforcement agency in the region began a house-by-house search for the killers. Governor Victor E. Anderson contacted the Nebraska National Guard, and the Lincoln Chief of Police called for the block-by-block search of the city. Frequent sightings of the 2 were often reported, but the teenage killers stayed one step ahead of the law. In need of a new car, thanks to the high-profile Ward's stolen Packard, Charlie and Carol found traveling salesman Merle Collinson sleeping in his Buick along the highway outside Douglas, Wyoming. After they woke Collinson, they shot him. Starkweather later accused Carol of finishing the salesman off after his shotgun jammed. He claimed that she was the most trigger-happy person he had ever met. So this is Charlie's own words towards Carol. And there's
Oh yeah,
insight
he was,
view.
I think, being honest about that. Yeah.
Merle Collison's body, a man Charlie claimed was murdered by Carol after his own shotgun jammed. The salesman car had a push pedal emergency brake, which was something new to Starkweather. While attempting to drive away, the car stalled. He tried to restart the engine, and a passing motorist stopped to help. Starkweather threatened him with a rifle, and an altercation ensued. At that moment, a deputy sheriff arrived on the scene. Carol ran to him, yelling something to the effect of, "It's Starkweather. He's going to kill me." Had she suddenly grown a conscience, or did she believe that Charlie was inevitably going to be caught and saw this was a way to escape the legal ramifications of their string of crimes? There's a picture of Carol. Carol waits for medical treatment for her shock to the Converse County Sheriff's Office after her surrender to the police. Charlie sped away, pursued by police in a chase that exceeded speeds of 100 miles an hour. A stray bullet managed to shatter his windshield, slicing him with flying glass. Covered in blood, he finally stopped the car and surrendered to the police. Converse County Sheriff Earl Heflin said he thought he was bleeding to death. That's why he stopped. That's kind of a yellow son of a bitch he is. Under questioning, Charlie first claimed Carol had been kidnapped by him and had nothing to do with the murders. However, he changed his story several times, finally testifying that at Carol's trial, that she was a willing participant. Carol Fugate has always maintained he was holding her hostage by threatening to kill her family, claiming she was unaware that they were already dead. Judge Harry A. Spencer didn't believe her story. She had many chances to escape. He said that she was given a life sentence on November 21st, 1958. Her sentence eventually commuted, allowing her to be paroled in June of 76. So she didn't even spend but 18 years. Charlie Starkweather, on the other hand, received the death penalty for the murder of Robert Jensen, the only murder of which he was tried, and was executed by electric chair at the Nebraska State Penitentiary. It looked like an L there, the I. in Lincoln, Nebraska at 12:01 a.m. on June 25th, 1959. Starkweather is buried in Wyuka Cemetery in Lincoln along with 5 of his victims, the Bartlett family and the Wards. Carroll was paroled in June of 76 after serving 17 and a half years at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women in York, Nebraska. She moved to Lansing, Michigan after her release, where she changed her name and worked as a janitor at the Lansing Hospital. Fugate married in 07, but aside from a brief appearance on a radio talk show in 96, has refused to speak about what had happened during the murderous crime spree. Now, I'm pretty sure that I remember reading here a few years back that Carol's new husband in 07 is already dead.
Mm-hmm.
She received benefits from. So that's kind of an overview on the Carol Fugate and Charlie Starkweather story.
Yeah, I didn't know 5 of his victims. That's I knew 2 because that's what I saw.
So the
But,
Ward and the
when I was
Jensen family.
That's very interesting. I knew the 2, but yeah, when his grave is a flat one. I know that it is not one of the ones that are up. It's up. It's one of the ground level ones, from what I understand. I had a picture years ago because I would have included it in this show, as to what it looked like, but it just ended up disappearing out of my archives. So when I went there with the other paranormal group, the people at the time, they didn't mind the people at Wyuka didn't mind photographs, but at the time they were saying don't show, where the street level what it looked like nearby. I don't know if the same rules are in place. So if when we film there, I'll just aim directly down at the grave. But yeah, with the camera. But yeah, this also my grandmother and grandfather at the time when this was going on, they actually had all the doors locked. They had shotgun. My grandfather had a shotgun aimed towards the kitchen on Hartley, seeing if he would show up. When they hyped the crap out of that when he was going on his killing spree. But he did only a couple things in the Belmont area and then took off from there, from what you read. But yeah, it the energy in that area, it probably, since I'm more energy sensitive now than I was back when I lived there, and I've been away, I'll probably be able to get a better feel on the spots that I want we should do the ghost box sessions from. But the area next to the 2 areas flanking the old Save Mart are where Fugate House and the liquor store. So but when I was there, when Joanna and I went back through there in 2017, the liquor store was still there. So Amen Liquors is the name of it. It was a penny candy shop back in the 50s. And my mother was like 3 when this happened. So I believe she was 3 or 4 when this happened. So yeah, it's actually was so there's a family personal connection to it based on that. And I believe my grandparents also knew members of the family at the time. So there is a family connection. Also, a friend of mine knows his nephew. So so yeah.
Well, I imagine the population of Lincoln, it says here in 1950, the population of Lincoln was 110,000. So I imagine the population was probably what, 120, 125?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
now it's more than double that.
Yeah, it's definitely more than double that. Even back in 17, there was a lot when I was
I
there
think it's
last time when I lived there.
300,000 now. So the town was a third of the size that it was. So probably everybody was a little bit more, even more cautious.
More on edge. Yeah. And my grandmother
Obviously,
told me at the time,
no
yeah,
ring doorbells, no video surveillance, nothing on that.
Yeah, you were just kind of on edge, like any noise you heard, you're like, what's that? I remember my grandmother saying they saw the reports on the TV at the time and they were terrified. So it so yeah, well, there's a family connection there, but at the same time, it's also the lore of Lincoln. He's like there's like positive things that have happened. There are a lot of ghost stories in Lincoln. If anybody's seen the ghost stories of Lincoln book series that were out there, but Starkweather has not made any of these publications, which I find very odd because there are ghost stories surrounding Charles Starkweather.
Yeah.
There's people that have seen him, people that have felt him, heard him, all of it. There are a few ghost stories around Charles Starkweather that have never made any of the publications. It'd be interesting to try to find people, if anybody in that area has had any ghost experiences with Charles Starkweather himself or Carol Fugate or anything regarding this case, put it in the comments below.
Yeah.
Because that I would find very interesting because I felt it at the time myself. But
And
I've
if
read,
even if you've seen the movie Murder in the Heartland, let us know if you have too.
yeah, it's a good movie, even though Lifetime movies, I'm kind of that is actually the best one
Yeah,
they
I
have.
think so. For the whole like that whole story that I just read, it covers everything in there.
They covered every single thing. My grandmother on my father's side, she we caught her in her den watching that very movie one time. So we thought that was
I
interesting. My
watched
other
it in high
grandmother,
school.
yeah, so did I. You know, I watched it was required watching in one of our classes to know about the
Yeah,
psychology of serial killers, along with Clockwork Orange. So Clockwork Orange is very rough, but it's necessary if you're going to see it if you're going into psychology. I feel Starkweather is another one of those. If you want to know what that kind of mind thinks, Manson and Starkweather are necessary cases to study. So, but yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I do
Uh,
like that one guy that played Charles Starkweather in the movie too. He was the
he did a
one that
great
I
job.
think he was in the Hulk. He was that super soldier in the Hulk that was trying to.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, he was a perfect choice. And also, little people know in the original Grand Theft Auto video game, the first one when it came out, the character that that you are in that game is was actually modeled after Charles Starkweather, the face
Huh.
and everything. Yeah, they may have changed it since then in some of the new renditions of it since then. When it first came out, it if you look carefully at the person, the it's a slight caricature, but the face then looked like Charles Starkweather. So I thought it was interesting they added that in as what the character looked like. It's supposed to be set in a fictional New York type town. Grand Theft Auto, it's San Andreas in a lot of them, but it was set. This one was set up by like New York versus like someplace like Lincoln or Chicago. So, but I found it interesting. They made the likeness look like him a lot.
Weird.
So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add before we go into the channel portion.
Do want to share one more little thing, then we can go
Okay,
into it. I'll share
sure.
screen one more time, and we're gonna
Mhm.
end it here before we go into questioning. Let me go right here. Found a news article after his successful execution. So Charles Starkweather dies in an electric chair. Mass killer meets death unperturbed. Utters in no last words in execution room. That's what I thought was interesting. I wonder what his last meal was. I should have tried to find that if they even offered. Charles Starkweather died in the electric chair at the Nebraska State Penitentiary early Thursday. He showed as little emotion as he had displayed when questioned about the 11 victims he confessed killing. He walked into a small, whitewashed room with a steady step. Two men were on either side of him. His red hair, shorn to a stubble, glistened in the lights. He looks at the chair. He seemed to look curiously at the oak chair as he approached it. He appeared to stumble and then sat down. A green curtain screened the chair as he was strapped into it. The curtain was then withdrawn, and Deputy Warden John Greenholtz said, "Charlie, do you have any last words you would like to say?" Starkweather shook his head vigorously. A blindfold was put across his eyes. A half dozen shocks. A short time later, the hands on the clock, which had run favorably for him on many other occasions, swept past 12:01 a.m. Deputy Warden Greenholtz, after he asked Starkweather if he had anything to say, stopped to one side behind a wooden partition which screened him from the chair. He held his hat over his heart. Starkweather lurched forward as the first of a half a dozen 2200-volt shocks was administered at 12:03 a.m. As the fourth shock was administered, Dr. P.E. Gester stared at his wristwatch. He and Dr. George E. Lewis, Jr. were on hand to pronounce Starkweather dead. "What's your hurry?" A short time later, Dr. Gescher put a stethoscope to Starkweather's chest and said, "He's dead." Dr. Lewis was called when Dr. B.A. Finkel, prison physician, suffered a heart attack and died shortly before the execution.
Hmm.
Mr. Greenholtz said Starkweather's words when prison officials went to fetch him were, "What's your hurry?" Starkweather's family visited him during this evening. Warden Maurice Sigler, who took over his post only last Monday, called it a normal execution, well organized. So,
Hmm. Interesting.
It's a little interesting thing just to go in. It was pretty dismal. His last day, it sounded like he was just accepted the fact and
Yeah, and then he moved on. Yeah, I find it interesting. There's actually two versions of that where he didn't have last words, and other people believe his last words were that bitch should be sitting on my lap. You know,
huh.
there where he said it from the chair itself.
Oh
So,
yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah. So there's
mhm.
one of the other little mystical conspiratorial what actually happened.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of
quite a bit.
mysteries surrounding the Starkweather murders. So yeah, I find that very interesting. That like I said, it hasn't appeared in too many paranormal anything. You don't really see it a whole lot. So maybe we can add to that. Doing the ghost box sessions and doing things like that when we're out on the outings. We can add to the canon basically of the Charles Starkweather murder canon. So I find that interesting. So if there's nothing else, we can go into the questions if you want.
Yeah,
We can
let's
do
do
that.
it.
Mhm. Yeah. Let me see here. Isaac, I would presume this is you this time. Okay. All right. You would presume correct. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. The energy has been rather chaotic. We've done a couple other shows in other areas, and as you're getting towards beginning of the Samhain time frame, it's pronounced Samhain. People call it Samhain, but that's where not only it's known as the harvest time frame from the fall equinox all the way to Halloween, which also the day after that, which is November 1st. That's All Saints Day, All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day. You get this steady, extremely spiked incline of energies and paranormal. Everything occurs. It's a clusterfuck when it comes to energies. So even the bad guys can't do a whole lot because there's so much activity going on. The veil's dropping all over the place. So Halloween's the strongest energetic time of the year, even above that of the winter solstice, believe it or not. So it dips down a little bit, hits the solstice, and then evens out after New Year's, after Christmas and New Year's. So, uh, and it's also part of the whole lore about it is it's the harvest, quote unquote, time is when Earth is the closest to the galactic central sun, and the energies are more intense dimensionally. That's part of the lore behind that too. So, okay, Isaac, yes, okay, okay. So, yes, I'm shutting up though.
Mhm.
Yes, this is actually an interesting topic. You see, what he was also picking up during your monologue is he was sensing some of Charlie Starkweather's energies, having been involved in some of the, like he calls it, the Clockwork Orange type program. What he was picking up on wasn't exactly false. He was picking up maybe some elements of his own, another program's existence somewhere else too. But he was seeing the Starkweather execution along with people cataloging what happened and the reactions given that they were also experimenting with the electroshock uh, of the electric chair as well to see how long it would take someone to pass as well. There's some people, believe it or not, were timing how long it would take him to die. They actually threw lots and bets on this. That's what some of the workers in the penitentiary did. This was actually in other circumstances it would be more funny, but it's very much like the Star Trek episode Mirror Mirror when they go to the mirror universe and people were taking lots on people dying in sickbay. This was kind of the same type of thing, where you also had other scientists that wanted to study how he was, very much like the character Malcolm McDowell's character in Clockwork Orange, very similar in its application. Not quite that far into like Clockwork Orange goes. It's more of a study of behavior, like a zoo animal or a captured animal of sorts. You're studying physiology and sociology, all this other psychology, all this of also how animals operate or how people operate in certain social situations. It was more along those lines. It wasn't quite where they kept his eyes open with the drops and all this other stuff. This is essentially what they were hoping to understand it in hopes to stop it and put an end to it in some fashion, very much like the scientists in that movie when it ended up backfiring because they basically tortured him. In the real scenario, it wasn't quite that dramatic. But in those scenarios, what brews somebody like this? Could he have been trained in a program to do this? And are you seeing this now with like the school shootings and the hospital shootings, even the Aurora movie theater shooting? Those are more MK Ultra people that are being pumped out of some of the underground programs. Some of the gang warfare is as too, where they reward violent behavior in some of the programs for people they abducted and or abducted as a child or trained to do these things. This is why gang warfare and the war on drugs continues to happen. But people like Charles Starkweather, on the other hand, he claims that Starkweather had no soul. Is there a difference between the soul and just an operational consciousness? Yes, because the brain has its own operational modus operandi and how it works. It's in constant like survival mode. The soul and the heart space are what the keep all of the in check. Very much like your Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek said, once someone forgot who they were, their true primal self came out. Very much like your Pike character in Strange New Worlds. When he forgot who he was, he became a raving maniac. People believe that those memories of who you are, what you've been taught against that of violence, that's what Roddenberry thought, where that was more the soul of the person or the man or the woman. That's not completely true, but he had close to the mark, as well as with somebody like Starkweather, what was the evolved portion of a person like what Roddenberry thought was taken away. That you could say is more of an etheric experiment by some evil out there, or energies that came through our genetic viruses in the DNA that could have caused some of this. There's another Star Trek one where people were plotting wars against each other based on numbers on a computer, and then they were just killing themselves, hoping to avoid a violent end by having a all out war. And Kirk's famous words were, "We just won't kill each other today." And Roddenberry believed that everybody evolved from violent predators at some point, and the soul was what became more and more out over a period of time as people became more involved. That is not necessarily completely true, but it's not false either. In the case of Starkweather, this does fit. So I can go into questions if you'd like.
Yeah, so I know that we're on the cusp of the energies again, of the Halloween time yet again. I just can't believe it. It just feels like last year we're talking about this again. But
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, how does that affect? I know paranormal activity ramps up and everything, but does that lead to overall better and more active and clearer ghost box sessions?
Yes, in fact, it does. Even though you have a variety of variations of things that talk on there, from ghosts to aliens to military messing around. To me, sometimes I do things with it, as he's shown proven on multiple ghost box sessions. To Elena Bessa and the rest of them, there are aliens that can do it, people with special technologies that can do it, and people wonder why. Well, if we have such special heightened technology, why can't we just talk like on a walkie-talkie? There's treaties in place that we can't do this, but we can do things from other frequencies. ETs, AI, all of the above. But as far as dimensional, also contact going as well, and other universes too. If you go to a time fracture, you could set up a ghost box. Time fracture is like your Bermuda Triangle. I would not recommend it there, by the way. But if you could kind of go where it's kind of tickling the balls of the land, basically, maybe you might get something. But on a time fracture, you could take a ghost box out, and people's cell phones have done this, where you might get in contact with another parallel universe version, maybe either of yourself standing there or someone else texting another phone. It would look like garble. And sometimes the galactic intranet does this as well, and records do this as well. But with, say, this time of year where all the veils are dropping, you will definitely get, without a doubt, some of your best class A EVPs, even on a regular recorder, that you would probably ever have gotten, because of the fact that it is the time of year that it is. And people think, again, like he said, that it was the equinox, which is the 21st of September, fall equinox. It doesn't. It does. It's officially starts. The Samhain starts that day, but it can. This is why you're feeling some of the revving up now. You're on the outer corona of that, or in the cross quarters between uh, power points of the year. There's these places called cross quarters, and also the Catholic Church offset things by at least 6 weeks in either direction in cases. So you are actually, it's a PowerPoint season, versus that of a singular day, but you're revving up to a power point, which is roughly the 31st of October and November 1st.
Nice. So, also along that type of deal with what we're going to be doing, like I said, we're going to be try to be investigating on notorious serial killer per se. Do evil people like that? Do you? It's kind of a loaded base question, unloaded question, but do evil people like that communicate more often, do you believe, through ghost box sessions than just some general, somebody that reaches like fame and notoriety for like an evil reason, like serial killers, like famous people, like people never forget about them. You
Mm.
think since people never forget about them, their names never, mm, will never really not be spoken again. It always continues to be spoken. Does that make spirits more active if they're never truly forgotten?
Yes, that is actually, you're dead on the mark, Aubrey, because if one is focused on more, that empowers that particular energy. And could that be that very being that's speaking on the ghost box more clearly and crisply? Absolutely so. Do I recommend calling Charlie Starkweather in? No, I do not. But there is a safe boundary between these where you can say true benevolence guards the interaction. And would Charlie Starkweather be able to talk that way? Absolutely. Are people focusing on him like they did on Elvis on the good side of the spectrum? Yes, that's what kept Elvis being seen in Graceland all those years, all the focus you see. And also other ghosts were around him empowering that as well. He's since moved on, but it's the same concept where the more you focus, the more that energy coalesces and the more that somebody like Starkweather on the negative side could be seen and Elvis on the positive side could be seen. You see. So yes, it's a yes to your question.
Cool. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for me, I believe, when it comes to all this. I'm just curious, to see what outcome we might get.
Yes, this is it will be an interesting outcome. Just be careful to protect your own energy as you go into some of these areas, because you don't know what you'll bring home with you. And he was sensing what he thought was Charles Starkweather's energy even now a little bit. And I had to quell it a little bit, but the more you talk about a
Actually,
person, sometimes the more you connect.
one final question. He brought it up right there. And especially like during Samhain time, whenever the other side opens up and it's clear and more open, do you need more protection? Do you ever
Yes,
do
I
what
do
protection
say yes
rituals
to
do
that.
you what what
Mhm.
what protection rituals do you recommend during that time of year?
Crystal grid, as we recommended to him, the forest people recommended to him too, to keep cleansing a crystal grid if you have it. He has his orgone pieces at the same time symbology, the focused mandalas that are of positive nature, uh, being able to be grounded most definitely must be done repeatedly during the Samhain time frame. Uh, Make sure if you do the work kind of work he does that you keep conversations, let's say within a certain, not necessarily just negativity, that's wrong, but keeping basically open and closed circle that are slightly tighter during this time of year because you don't know who could be listening. That's why he saw before your guys' recording something was watching and listening. This is the nature of this time of year, but make sure you are grounded fully. To accomplish this is hematite can accomplish this, visualizing your roots going into the earth, visualizing tree roots going to the earth through your feet. Salt, sea salt, dead sea salt in your shower, rubbing your feet on the granulated salt will help ground, will peel off any ungrounding, and also, like I said, visualizing touching the earth with your bare feet, going out with your bare feet. Now, if somebody is brave enough, being naked outside under the sun to accomplish this is this instantly, uh, because of the fact
Hmm.
that you're in nature, you're fully present in nature, your energetics also are receptive of the sun. This can also be said of paranormal activity, I might add. If someone were to go traipsing around nude in a cemetery, they would attract far more attention than they probably bargained for. This is actually because then they are more grounded, they are more noticed, they are more seen, and of course, ghosts of like say of naked ladies walking around, of course, are going to men are going to look, and vice versa for women with men or whatever. So this the energies are more coalesced around a naked person. So this is a quick way to ground if you want to do it instantly, as well as if he would say using a tatami mat, in your home, Japanese tatami mat with the reeds, that helps. And also keeping your home grounded. If you take a copper pipe and you wind the copper pipe, copper wire into the pipe, drill through it, and hook that to the foundation of your home, you will ground or earth your entire home, and you will be able to walk. If you walk barefoot or naked or whatever in your home, you can accomplish this goal as well. But grounding is extremely important. Creating a crystal grid is important, and also making sure saging and doing all those other little clearing methods are essential this time of year, because it is more revved up. From now until November 1st, it is extremely revved up and heightened to the point where it may be more than you bargained for, but it is also on the flip side, the good side. The bad guys aren't as active, but at the same time, or they can't cut through all the noise. At the same time, you will get far more paranormal evidence than you probably bargained for.
Thank you. Very good information.
Yes. Thank you. If there's nothing else.
Nope. Yeah, you covered it up pretty well.
All right. Thank you all for listening to me once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Great
Yeah,
information.
Channeling this time of year is actually far more vibrant too. And if you can be in nature, that is the best medicine. When we went out to Spirit Lake back at the beginning of the month, or at the end of August rather, the energy was so vibrant there because there was very little tech and it was a forest out there. Isaac was around. I literally could see him sitting in a chair in our bedroom space. So he was very sharp, and I could literally hear him easier with my ears and with the psionic abilities. Very crisp, very clear. Any spirit folk that were out there, and also the forest people, were coming in crystal clear. If you can do any of these type of rituals honoring the earth, honoring, grounding, any of that in a nature place like that, away from tech, it's even better. So, because tech is highly affected by this time of year. It is by ghosts. So generally, I had a ghost even drain the battery of this laptop I'm talking on right now, even while it was plugged in. So when we were in Arizona, and it still functioned, it overheated a minute because a ghost was affecting it. The other day, another one came in this very room, and from all this activity, and made the computer overheat a little bit. And I got rid of it. I cleaned it out. Some people's energies themselves will do this. You will notice all of these things heighten up from this point forward. And it's interesting, this is being recorded on 9/9, the triple or the double nines in this case. I should air this sometime like at 9 o'clock tonight or something, just to make the triple nines. But these are power numbers that bad guys and good guys have used to accomplish sacred geometry, like my Merkaba back here. That are these eyeballs to keep remote viewers and others, ghost and spirit folk, from watching. And I have the Merkabas in the corners there. Yes, Isaac, I know circles do not have corners. I understand. Okay, but or edges. Round edges, you idiot. Okay, let me see. He goes, you do this to people, I'm doing it back. Anyway, but anyhow, this is tis the season for spooky encounters. Let's just put it that way. I saw a ghost when I saw the ghost come in here. It was fully formed in a mist-like form. It looked like water vapor you couldn't see through. So, like water misting from like Niagara Falls or something. That's what it looked like, and that's a frequency difference. This is why classic ghost pictures, and I will mention this on this. I know this was not part of this, but classic ghost pictures, this is why you see the face where it's all like a sheet, because this was explained very well in the show Doctor Who, where he visits a paranormal team in the TARDIS, and he took pictures of they took pictures of what they thought was a ghost. And what it was, he goes, what this in reality was, and I don't know the name of the character, but he was scanning through the frequencies, and he peeled back the frequency layers, and it was a person on the other side of that frequency that was just out of sync with our dimensional lens, pretty much. This time of year, this is why you're seeing things more vibrantly, because those veils, those lenses are not as covered, and they are everything's closer together, and those curtains are basically been pulled up or dropped. The veils have dropped. It's not as descriptive saying the veils have dropped, but there's a lot more to the physics. But this is this time of year, and you'll get more. Also, unfortunately, you get more psychotic behavior, especially if the full moon lands on Halloween, like it did last year. But if you get it in the same vicinity, you're going to get both psychotic activity from the moon energies. The moon would probably be a great episode of this to do at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The controversies beside the hollow moon and all that
Yeah.
other stuff. But then put Halloween and the Samhain or Samhain on top of that, and you got basically a blender going on, pretty much. And I was in Salem, Massachusetts back in 2016 on Halloween. So that you want to talk about weird energies. That place and Halloween go right together like bread and butter, pretty much. So I would highly recommend doing the tours and doing that stuff there. Just make sure not to get attachments like I did. Protect yourself. Visualize an energy, like essentially an energy field around you coming out, like an infinite energy coming out from around you and in you from in you and around you, and hold your aura close to you. Or visualize a suit of armor, whatever shield you want to put around you. Different colors, like my red shirt here. I also have the ones with the symbols on them and stuff like that. Red's potent, a potent protector. Black is too. This is why witches use black, and Japanese heroes used red, and they thought it was a hero's color. And
Good, they were both wearing red.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, you're wearing that beach patrol, and it's just a normal red shirt. I'm wearing my my protective amulet, and another one some friends of ours did, but a friend of mine did. But at the same time, I usually have the other one that has the symbols on it. So if people want to get that from me, let me know. But I'm also going to make sure that conspiracy sector shirts are more available as well.
Oh, yeah.
So with or without symbols on them. So Aubrey, I don't know if you have anything left.
That's it. I guess we'll see everybody for part 2. Let's just hope that it's good, Let's hope that it's good weather. Hope that we can find the grave. Hope that we have a good investigation. And this, the main thing, I hope that there's not like a funeral procession like right beside us or something like that.
Right.
Then it probably we're gonna have to wait. But other than that, if all the stars align, it should be a good time. But this is episode 1 of Charlie Starkweather's ghost investigation.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for watching this. This is of course going to be made available before I head to Nebraska. It would be kind of pointless if I didn't. So at this point, you are now exiting the conspiracy sector. So bye-bye, everybody.
Adios.
Okay, one thing I didn't mention is I knew this lady that had this son that one time he started acting psychotic, and she came to me for help because she locked herself in her bedroom, and this boy, I read his energy, and I noticed his soul wasn't there. He was totally psychotic, and she was afraid. She goes, "This isn't him. Something's happened." I found a demon had messed with him, and the soul dislodged. And I went and hunted down the soul, put it back. I said, "You get back in that body." I acted like I stapled him or nail gunned him in place. Went poof, 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 poof. Turned out eventually he, further several years down the road, he committed suicide. This was a soul that was very uncomfortable. The energies here were probably very vulnerable to demon attack, like what had happened to him. And I felt sorry for the lady at that point. I found, he eventually died. I'm not going to mention her name or his name here, but this his body automatically turned psychotic. So Roddenberry wasn't really wrong when he said that we like what the holographic doctor said to the character of Suter and Tuvok in sickbay in Star Trek Voyager. He goes, we all evolved from some predator or some other. The Vulcans dealt with it through logic. Humans with their intellect and artistic pursuits, things that were their passion essentially. But Suter was a Betazoid who was like a Starkweather figure, and Tuvok was helping him. And Tuvok took on some of his psychotic tendencies and reverted into a primal Vulcan. And they had to help him and switch the thoughts back because he entangled with him. And ended up helping him out by copy-pasting his logic onto him. But anyway, Suter always said, "Oh, I did it because I could. Oh, why'd you kill this crewman?" Because he looked at me funny. And Tuvok goes, "That's not logical." He tried to figure out, and he became too curious, and he was like Icarus flying too close to the sun, pretty much. Interesting episode on basically serial killer psychoticness, and also they were referring to, or Isaac was referring to Pike from Strange New Worlds when he lost his memory, and that was a great episode showing what people can do to regain SSP memories back. Like the Ortegas, the pilot, she goes, "I am," had her name. And she kept saying her name over and over again, bringing herself back to right so she could pilot the Enterprise. Also, the lights of Zatar, when in the old series, Scotty's girlfriend gets possessed by these lights of multiple consciousnesses, and it's basically turning her into a they. And she goes, "I am." This is why I always say the they/them thing has to disappear, because it's a spell that spreads that out. And Roddenberry showed it. I am. It was the character's name. I don't remember the character's name. Having a brain fart moment, but I am not they/them. You see. So this is the same thing with serial killers. Their soul just isn't there, or is being clouded with an entity over the top of it, taking control of them. Possession, oppression, you know the rest. That can bring out psychotic behavior or programming. Disappearing and make people go into deer in the headlights, like Roddenberry said in Earth Final Conflict, when a woman had been abducted by aliens, de-aged, and reprogrammed. The host of a talk show basically questioned some memories she was having, and she went in the deer in the headlights look. Now, with these symbols that we have, like this guy, one of two things will happen. Somebody will do like deer in the headlights, where it deprograms them, or they go into a violent psychotic rage. I've seen both, and the other one's very rare. Saw a post office worker that was, I had a sigil on the side of the box. I had my shirt on, I had the yellow one on. This isn't one of those, this is a regular shirt, but went in there with the bright yellow one, the Captain Kirk shirt. And I had the sigil on the box. I said, "Can you please not cover the sigil?" And she goes, "No, sir, you're going to have to let me do this." And I had tower busters in the box too. So that was a double whammy on the programming. And I said, "No, I want you to put this label where I asked. I left you real estate on the box. Please don't cover our advertising or our sigils. I'm not taking this anymore." And she just threw things up in the air and just left. That was some of the tower busters hitting the program, but it was a sigil as well. And obviously entities were there doing crap at the post office as well. So we nicknamed that person the Fraggle for a reason. Colorful hair, like the buns on either side, like a Fraggle. If you don't know what I mean, look up Fraggle Rock. But back to center here. The boy that eventually died, his soul probably wasn't supposed to be here for very long anyway, and it changed the mother's life forever, obviously. Person got off Facebook, didn't hear from her for a long time, but I attempted to keep the demons away. The demons were patrolling. Ghouls were really patrolling because they smelled death. The Draco will just do it just to do it. Let's talk about psychotic. They are soulless creatures. That the only soul energies they get are ones they absorb from us. They're reptilian in nature, so like Morpheus said to Neo in the Matrix, they will never be as strong or as fast as you. He was referring to artificial intelligence. Draco have this as well, but they're a reptilian brain. People always say demons cannot co-create, so they try to meat puppet through us, and well, I say it that way, and project their co-creative narratives through us, which is true from non-corporeal and corporeal, but with Draco reptilians specifically, they don't have the same imagination center, but they have strong psionic abilities. So they try to warp us and turn us into monsters. So they've done that before. And also there's this famous story of some it wasn't Germany, but it happened in Germany as well in the medieval period, but in closer to now, where some people were being hypnotized by Draco to be abducted, and our people were, per the agreements, the Eisenhower Accords, people got to be abducted in exchange for technologies with the Greys and whatnot. The Draco were allowed to take them. And they put up this psionic field of several Draco that were there, getting people depressed, angry, and down in the doldrums. It hit some of the soldiers and guards nearby, and they were never right since. Same thing with the Battle of Dulce. They were hit psionically afterwards, and a lot of them committed suicide as a result, because of more likely those aliens were harassing them from under the ground. Both Draco, Tall White, and Eben alike. So I know it's skewed, but these are a lot of the things that are going on in the background. Halloween, or the Samhain time frame, which is 9/9 today. That's a power number. And Roddenberry said we didn't quite have the right meanings of the numbers and the frequencies, as they've been convoluted with some New Age teachings and some of the metaphysical meanings, like stones. Some people don't have the stone alchemies right. Maybe that's another one we can do at some point. But I'm going to end this here. I just needed to add that. So it is 1:44. Of course, 1:04 and a 4 and 2 is 9, of course. Those 1:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, September 9th, 2024. Thank you. Okay, what's odd? The original Star Trek episode that was being made reference to with the computer war, I cannot find that in the list anymore. I'll have to look on Netflix later on or something, or Paramount Plus or something. You look it up on online, and you can get the Strange New Worlds episode. The Strange New Worlds episode is Season 2, Episode 4, Among the Lotus Eaters. Returning to a planet that dredges up tragic memories, Captain Pike and his landing party find themselves forgetting everything, including their identities, as he confronts a ghost from his past. So, of course, that comes up as a 7 and 8 there. That's like SSP memories coming up, tragic memories. They showed how to get memories back in that episode beautifully. But the one with the computer war, I cannot find that one. We'll just not kill each other today, the quote by Kirk. Can't find it so far online, which I find very weird. It was here before when I was looking up the show titles. I'll look it up later when we're on Paramount Plus to try to get the exact title. But and see if it's on there and just not on Google. But we'll see. It's interesting. It is 2:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, September 9th, 2024. Thank you. Okay, I found the episode. It's Season 1, Episode 24, A Taste of Armageddon. A computerized war fought by two planets ensnares the Enterprise. That was February 22nd, 1967. So I finally found it, but it won't appear online. It only on online on the streaming service on Paramount Plus, but it will not appear on the online searches, which I found very, very interesting. So I said if I found it, I would say it. So it is 11:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. Thank you.